In the post-Pesach period, the limud of Klal Yisrael is Pirkei Avos. In the summer months, Klal Yisrael, that's the limud that unifies Klal Yisrael that we learn in the post-Pesach period. So perhaps we'll take a few weeks, take several Mishnayos of Pirkei Avos and analyze them and try to connect into the koyach, into the power of Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos begins, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek la'olam haba, shenemar va'amech kulam tzadikim la'olam yirshu aretz netzer matai masay yadai lispoyer. It starts off somewhat unusually. Other Masechtas don't start off this way. It says that Kol Yisrael, all of Klal Yisrael, every Yid has a chelek la'olam haba. And it's interesting why Pirkei Avos begins with this chizuk, telling us and reassuring us that every Yid has a chelek la'olam haba. We don't find this by other Masechtas. Another question that comes to mind is, why is this called Pirkei Avos? Why is this Masechta called Pirkei Avos? It apparently and seemingly does not have anything to do with the Avos. It's a Masechta of limud of midas taivas and derech eretz. And what is the connection to the Avos? The Avos are rarely, if at all, mentioned, just very, very sparingly. Why is it called Pirkei Avos? A third question that we should ask is, it starts off, Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai Masor Yeshua. It starts off, the Masechta starts off with the Mesiras HaTorah, the Kabbalah HaTorah, the Messiah that Moshe was Kabbalah Torah Sinai, he passed it on to Yeshua to the Zakanim Lenavim, etc., etc. Other Masechtas don't start with the Messiah, the Mesiras HaTorah, the tradition. Why does this Masechta start off with this introduction? Now, on this last point, the Bartanura makes a fascinating observation. He says that other nations have chachamim. Other nations have books of midos, of ethics. They also compiled books of ethics. But we shouldn't make a mistake and think that Pirkei Avos is a book of ethics that were compiled by our Chachamim. There's books of ethics compiled by Greek philosophers, by other Chachamim. We shouldn't make a mistake and think, and this is the book of ethics compiled by our Chachamim. No. Our Midas, the book of our ethics, is Torah. It's not something that the Chachamim made up and they thought and they came upon this on their own. Moshe Kibel Torah of Sinai u'Masor Yeshua. These midos, what's mentioned in this Masechta of Avos, are the midos that came from Sinai. They're the midah that was passed down from generation to generation. These are the midos that came min Shemayim. These are heilige midos. There are many midos, there are many books of ethics. The books of ethics of the nations, what today is considered ethical, tomorrow will be considered immoral. How many things have we seen in our lifetimes? How many have we seen in our lifetimes of things that were considered acceptable, were considered even praiseworthy? In a short period of time, it's reversed, and it's considered wrong. It's considered unethical. It's considered immoral. The very same things that just a short time ago were praiseworthy and ethical are immoral. Those are the ethics of the nations. They are fleeting. What's ethical today is unethical tomorrow. Our ethics are eternal. They're nitzchi, because it came from Sinai. It came from Shemaim, came from the Kodesh Baruch Hu, passing to Moshe, Moshe to Yeshua, this kingdom, etc. This is our Messiah. This is our Messiah. This is our Messiah, our Heilige Messiah. And our ethics are eternal. They're not always understood by the world at large. But then again, the ethics of the world at large will not be understood by they themselves in a short period of time. It's all fleeting. It has no eternal value. So we start Pirkei Avos with introduction, that Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, that we should know what we're dealing with over here. We're dealing with midos, we're dealing with ethical behavior that is Sinai. And it's called Maseches Avos. Why is it Maseches Avos? Why is it Pirkei Avos? I heard a beautiful pshat from my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Dovid Schwartzman Zatzal. It says that after Klal Yisrael got the mitzvahs and got the Torah, they were boichel lemishbechoisam. They were crying. They were crying lemishbechoisam on the matters of their family. Why were they crying on the matters of their family? So Chazal tell us because after Matan Torah, their family members became ulcer to them. They were not allowed to marry their family members. They're not allowed to stay married to their family members. Once we got the Torah, then the arayas became ulcer. So they can no longer marry and have families within their own families. So they're boichel mishbechoisam. The Maral asks a kasha. Why is that so? We know that a ger shenisgayer, a ger who's misgayer, is kikotin shenoila dami. He's like a newborn. He's like a newborn, and he does not have any of his previous family ties. They're not considered his relatives anymore. He is like born anew. He has no connection to his past. And he does not have an isser of arayas. If there are two gerim, brother and sister, who are Megayer, they were brother and sister. But after gerus, they're not related anymore. They don't have the isser of arayas. So why, Klal Yisrael, by Matan Torah, they were considered gerim? After Kabbalah Torah, we were considered like gerim. We were not Yidden before. We became full-fledged Yidden. We became gerim. So why was arayas also? Why was there a nis of arayas? Why were the boichel mishbechoisam? They should have been kikotin shenoila dami. They should have been mutter, because they were born as new. For the Maral answers that he says that they were not kikotin shenoila dami because their gerus was bal karchai. They were coerced. Kaf alem har kegigis. The mountain was over them, towering over them, and ready to bury them if they were not makabel the Torah. It was a gerus bal korcha, and by a gerus bal korcha, against their will, when they're coerced, we don't say kikotin shenoila dami. Fragt Rav Dovid Zatzal, what does that mean? A gerus that's bal korcha is not a valid gerus. So how could they be considered gerim? If they were forced and coerced, why was it a valid gerus? A gerus bal korcha, if one forces a ger, coerces him to be magayer, it's not a valid gerus. And why in any event should that make a difference? Why should it make a difference as far as kikotin shenoila dami if it was bal korcha or not bal korcha? It was against their will or not against their will. Why should that make a difference as far as the din of katan shenoila dami is concerned? Answered Rav Dovid. He said, our gerus is fundamentally different than a gerus from a goy who becomes a yid. In a regular gerus, a gerus of a goy who becomes a yid, The process of Gerus is severing himself completely from his past, cutting all ties to what he was, severing that past, and now becoming a Yid. So he has no connection to his past. And he has no connection to his family members. He's kikotin shenoiladami. He's born as new. He's a new person. He's not the same person. Because that Gerus severed his ties completely. Our Gerus is fundamentally different. Our Gerus is not severing our ties with our avos. We're not separating from our past. Our past was our avos HaKadoshim. We're not severing those ties. Opposite, we're completing the process of Gerus that they started. That was the Gerus that they started, and this is just the completion of that Gerus. The completion of that Gerus with the Kabbalas HaTorah, with the Kabbalas Ol Mitzvahs. And that type of a Gerus can be done Bal Karcha, because prior to that, we were already basically Yidden. It just wasn't complete. And we're not severing those ties with our always. It's strengthening those ties with our always. And therefore, a Gerus Bal Karcha is valid in our case. And therefore, we don't say Kikotin Shenoila Domi, because we are connected to our always. We're not new without any connection to the past. We are Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. And therefore, it's not Kikotin Shenoila Domi. We are Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. We are the children of the Avos. And in that vein, in Ruach HaChaim, Rav Chaim Volozhner, he says the following. He says, where is the koyach that a Yid gets to do all kinds of wondrous things, to be Meiser Nefesh? Where does he draw that koyach throughout the history and the history of the Golus? Throughout our history, there have been Yidden who have been willing to be Meiser Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem. Where does that koyach come from? That koyach comes from the Avos. That koyach comes from the Avos HaKadosh. Hoylach betumet tzadik. Ashrei banav achrav, the pasuk zok the pasuk in Mishlei. Ashrei banav achrav, the banav achrav, we who are descendants of the Avos, we draw from that koyach. And so things that were considered monumental tasks, the nisyanos of the Avos, the Akedah, which stands for the schus, stands for us all these years, we draw on that koyach of Mesiras Nefesh, of Avram Avinu and Yitzchak, the koyach of Yaakov. We draw upon that. So Yidden were able to be Meiser Nefesh throughout history because of that koyach that the Avos instilled in us and implanted in us. And we have that in the shorish of our neshama, and we are nourished from that, and we draw from that. We're able to do great things because of them and because of what they implanted in us. And the Beis Halevi says, we daven Shemona Esrei. We daven 3 times a day. Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Why are we mentioning the Elokei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? They had schusim. They were great. What does that do for us? Why is that a reason that our tefillah should be answered? Zok the Beis Halevi, because we say Elokei Avram Yitzchak, we are children of the Avos, and they were great, and they had schusim, and they were Ovdei Hashem, and they were worthy of being saved and worthy of brachos, and we have their midos. We have instilled in us, implanted in us. We have some of those midos toivos. We have some of those chusim, and we're capable and worthy of being saved because we are worthy and capable of being Ovdei Hashem because we are the children of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And those midos that they had, we have them in us, and we are capable of doing great things because we are their children. Pirkei Avos. This is Pirkei Avos, the Perek, the Masechta of Midos Tovos. of ethics, of character traits. It's called Pirkei Avos because those midas tovos that the Avos had, they instilled in us. And we're capable of those midas tovos. And we're capable of acting in a refined character in the way they acted. We're capable of all of that. And we have that within us. And we have to emulate them and follow in their ways. It's the Pirkei Avos of the midas tovos. Rabbeinu Yonah says in Shara Tshuva that a person should always remember the Avos, remember their ways, and try to emulate them. And a person should always realize who he is, the children of the Avos, and always be cognizant of his self-worth. We always have to remember and be cognizant of our self-worth, that we are the chosen people. We are Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they were the shining dogma example of what the bria of what the Kodesh Baruch Hu had in mind of what mankind should be. And we should keep that in mind and emulate that and know that we are their children and know that we are capable of great things and acting in an ethical, proper way. You know, this realization that we are the children of the Avos HaKadoshim, and keeping that in mind, that is something that has preserved us physically, emotionally, and ethically throughout our goals. Pirkei Avos, the Masechta of ethics. Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. Our ethics are from Sinai. Not long ago, some 75 years ago, the most cultured nation in the world, who had their ethics, the most refined, cultured civilization in the world, who had their book of ethics, and they were able, in spite of all their culture and ethics, they were capable of acting in the most humane manner probably in the history of mankind. And they were degrading our people and trying to dehumanize Klal Yisrael. And they were trying to dehumanize us and treating us as animals. What preserved so many of the survivors through that horrible period, through that terrible period, through the camps, was the knowledge, the belief, and the chizuk that they got and were given by Gedolim, that no, we are Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We are a chosen people. And we always have to remember that. And never let them dehumanize us. And never fall prey to their pretentious ways and their pretending that they're a superior culture and they are an ethical nation. And that knowledge preserved us and helped us maintain our dignity, even in the face of this cruel, dehumanizing, unspeakable behavior and treatment that we had. And we emerged from that. And we always have to remember, Torah is eternal. And Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, and our ethical behavior may not be understood all the time. It may not be respected by the nations all the time, but it is eternal. And we are Bnei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And we are capable of emulating them and following in their ways. And we should be zeicha learning Maseches Avos, to draw upon this, to draw upon their midos and their schusim, and be Ovdei Hashem the way the Rabbeinu Shalom really wanted us and